All right, let's talk about this Haitian immigrant Springfield, Ohio story, the cats and the dogs. That's what's getting all the headlines. The more I read about this, I watch interviews about this. I've watched a bunch of people talk about this. The either the mayor or the city manager. I did watch a YouTube clip of him on with Chris Cuomo, and I'm not a big JD Vance fan, but I do think he speaks truthfully and correctly when he says, like, the dogs and the cats, which may not be true at all, or a small kernel of it might be true somewhere in Ohio, it's gotten people to pay attention to an issue. And I'm all for immigration. I'm all for legal immigration. And I'm all even for helping people. These people in Haiti that are refugees or going through crisis down there in a country where it's really hard to succeed and survive. But also, like, to me, there has to be a limit. You can't just dump, that's a harsh term, but like, you can't just go ahead and add all these people to a community and act like it's going to happen seamlessly. That's not fair to the citizens that live there. It's not fair to the people coming in from Haiti. And the more I read about this, the fact that you have systems being basically overwhelmed in terms of the hospital. There's all this disease because of low vaccine rates in Haiti. These folks obviously don't speak English. They don't know our driving laws. There's all kinds of issues with reckless driving. And again, as a person who I'm pro legal immigration. I'm pro helping people out. And I'm by the way, this interview I watched is either the city manager or the mayor of Springfield, Ohio. I have no idea if he's a Democrat or Republican after this 10-minute interview. And that's the best compliment I can give this guy. I have no idea his politics. But he was trying to be nice about it. He's like, we got overwhelmed with people. We can't handle it. We need help. And so it took the cats and the dogs crazy comment for people to understand that. Like, I'm more with Republicans on this one than I am Democrats, even though Trump said crazy stuff. But like, these people in Springfield, it really does seem like this is overstressing everything in the area.
Yeah, look, I think a lot of things can be true at the same time, and sometimes I think we struggle with that. Like, it can be true that there are a lot of problems at which in Springfield, which you outlined many of them very well, because you had a town of 60,000 people roughly that had roughly 15,000 Haitian immigrants come into that area in a fairly short period of time. It can also be true that the Trump Vance way of attacking it has gone like way over the top, bordering
Yeah.
on like racism to bring in unfounded claims of eating cats and dogs. There's a couple of claims of some geese being swiped up at the park, right? That's the extent of what we have in terms of the animals. No dogs or cats being killed or eaten that we know of, right? I mean, you never know, right? It's crazy. Is there one person who may have done it somewhere that we haven't heard about yet? But the point is, it demonizes an entire group. And here's one of my biggest problems with it. These are people here legally. These are not people who jumped the fence and are broke the law. They came here legally. And I didn't know a lot about the Springfield situation, I'll be honest, even when it first came up. But since time has gone by, there's been a lot more reporting on it. So what happened was you had a town, and I grew up in a town like this, where you had a lot of people that left the town and a lot of industry that left the town, and the town was kind of struggling. But they did have land and they did have factories. And so their economic development people, I think, smartly said, hey, let's try to turn this town around. Let's try to revitalize this area. We don't really have a lot of workers here. Let's bring in workers for these factories. And it worked. It worked too well. And what happened was these Haitian immigrants came to the country. And the reason they can come here legally is because we have a long tradition in America, and I think a good one, of helping people who are in dire circumstances in countries that are collapsing. And Haiti is a great example of that. If you've been following the news, this country's essentially been taken over. This is not an exaggeration, by armed gangs who run a large chunk of the country, if not most of it, and kill people and extort people and kidnap people. And so you have these desperate people who applied for this status through this program, came here legally, and are working. These are not people sitting here collecting welfare, draining resources. By and large, they are working. helping to revitalize that area. And the guy I love on this is Mike DeWine. You know, I'm not a Republican anymore. I'm an independent, but I would vote for him in a heartbeat. I
He's
love
great.
Mike DeWine. He's
He's
awesome.
great.
And the way he talks about this, he does the thing that Trump is incapable of doing, and Vance as well too. Although Vance is capable, he just chooses not to. And that is holding two thoughts in your mind at the same time. On the one hand, these are people who are here legally working, and we shouldn't demonize them. On the other hand, to the point you made earlier, the Biden Harris administration should have done a better job of providing resources to the local community when you had this program that was allowing these Haitians to come here legally to work. When you saw that a large number of them were migrating to Springfield, you should have surged resources into that town to deal with the kind of things you're talking about, to deal with the increased burden on on medical care, on the school system, the driving problems you're having. That would have been, and DeWine has talked to the federal government and is asking, and the state and the feds are beginning to try to get more help in there. That's the way to deal with this. Demonizing immigrants, especially those that are here legally. And look, there's a way to talk about this that points out the problems, but doesn't demonize the immigrants. That's the way DeWine talks about it, and other people have talked about it. That's not the way that Trump and Vance have talked about it. And that is my problem with Trump and Vance. If you want to say, I'm against illegal immigration, we need to crack down on that, I'm with you 100%. The Biden administration has a terrible record up until the last few months on that issue. And that's totally fair to talk about. It's fair to talk about the problems of large migration and the issues that can cause. But there's a way to do it without demonizing the people, again, that are here legally and are working. And it gets back to why I can't get totally on board with the Republicans, even on immigration, because I don't agree with chaos at the border. I don't agree with large-scale illegal immigration, but I also don't agree that we need to go after legal immigration. We need more legal immigration because we aren't having babies in this country. Our birth rate is falling. If we don't bring people in, we're going to have a economy that's going to get smaller and smaller and smaller over time because we have fewer and fewer people. Now, we need to do it orderly. We need to make sure we're bringing in people who we've checked out. We need to crack down extensively on illegal immigration, fine. But you don't hear Trump, for the most part, he does every once in a while, you don't hear him really talk about that. What he talks about is mass deportations, and they're eating the cats that are eating the dogs.
I will say this, though, and this is more of a big picture point. I I align more with Republicans just overall on immigration than I do Democrats, although I don't agree with everything, and their rhetoric can be pretty ugly sometimes. But I think at the end of the day, the reason that, for lack of a better word, we allow as much immigration is, I think, look, this country is run by corporations, and whether you're Democrat, Republican, and whether these folks are legal or illegal, corporations love cheap labor. And whether these people are coming over illegally or, in this case, legally, the Haitian immigrants, let's be real about this. A lot of these people that are coming from countries where it's being run by cartels, they are so happy to just be in America and be somewhere safe. They literally will work for anything. You can pay these people way less. I do think that suppresses wages for workers overall, and that's a big part of this that I think if I'm a Republican, I would focus more on that, right? And here's me. I'm pro immigration, pro legal immigration, and I even think we should take in these refugees, a certain amount of them if it makes sense. But let's be real. It is suppressing wages for working class citizens who are from the United States of America. And to me, that's the reason this happens. That's the reason it's really allowed, is that the corporations that run this country, they love cheap labor.
I think that is a large part of it. I think that's totally true. But I think there's a balance because I think it is true that the competition for labor does drive down wages. But I think it's also true that there are some jobs and some industries that would be very, very hard to fill with a native born population
Agreed.
unless you paid a wage that was so ludicrously high that a
Yeah.
business could never function. And that's part of the issue. Like Springfield theoretically could have done this by attracting workers from Minnesota or North Dakota or California, but it didn't happen. It happened when you had, because why? Because if I'm in Minnesota, do I want to move to Springfield, Ohio to take a job making essentially probably what I could make in Minnesota? Probably not. If I have no ties to Springfield, Ohio, would I do that? Would I work in that factory? You see what I'm saying? But the Haitians, and that is by the way, that's not a unique thing of 2024. That's the history of America. That's where most of our grandparents and great grandparents came from. And what they did, they came to this country and they worked these jobs that other people maybe didn't want, and they helped revitalize and build these industries. Now, is there a point where it becomes too much? 100%. And over the last few years, it has been too much. We have had millions of people come across this border and stay in this country, even though they're not legally, technically allowed to be here. And that's a problem. That's a huge problem. But to me, that's different than a limited legal program to help people in different countries. And I think we need a balance. And again, I just point to the long-term demographics. The birth rate is probably not changing. If you look at developed countries all over the world, birth rates are falling. It's not an America thing. It's happening in Asia. It's happening in Europe. Different economies, different cultures. It's happening everywhere. And other countries like China, it's going to put them in a huge bind. Their population is going to shrink dramatically. But the advantage we have in America is we are a destination and we have a history of assimilating immigrants. And that gives us a huge advantage if we take advantage of it. We can still thrive and grow our economy despite a declining birth rate. Other countries don't have the ability to do that. Now, as long as we manage it smartly, I think that is not only what we should do, it's a necessity because we will not have the workforce to support our aging population otherwise. We're just not making enough babies, Charlie.
Well, let's get on it, man. Come on, let's do this. Okay.